that's exciting to me. To me, status quo and just kind of growing a couple percent, that's boring. So we really want to make sure when you're coming to the stadium, it feels like home. And not only
Yeah.
does it feel like home and it feels relevant to you, it's something that you're proud to showcase of like, what do I want to do and why do I want to do it? What that really kind of forced you to do was to say, okay, well, how are we effective overall? How do we build consistency? And how do we do it in such a way that allows autonomy for the people on the ground to make sure the local cultural nuance doesn't trip us up, that we can actually use that as an advantage? Because we're one of the most diverse cities in the United States as well. And so we want to make sure those game elements, that music is all represented there. Overall, it'll be a different experience. We have that opportunity in front of us. And it'll be seismic.
What if your next hire could shift your entire season? What if you never had to settle for second best ever again? In the world of sports and entertainment, pace is everything. You don't have to sift through weak resumes or wait months to fill senior roles. That's where your partnership with a global talent partner comes in. As a Financial Times fastest growing company 3 years running, when you partner with Forsyth Barnes, you'll tap into a global talent network built specifically for the fast-paced world of sports and entertainment. Having placed talent for some of the biggest leagues, venues and brands in the industry, you can connect with world-class candidates fast and onboard the top talent that you need to succeed. 98% of roles filled. 92% of candidates staying in post over 2 years. Delivery guaranteed. Forsyth Barnes, your global talent partner, disrupting the recruitment industry. Book your free hiring consultation now at www.forsythbarnes.com and see just how your competitors are staying ahead. Hello. We are back with another Path to the Pros episode and very excited to announce today's guest. Probably one of the best resumes you'll come across, but someone who's done a great job at flying under the radar and just getting things done. You've got Cleveland Cavs on there, AEG, legends for over a decade, and is now sat as the president of the Houston Texans, Mike Tomon. Mike, thank you for joining the podcast.
Hey, Samir, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, likewise. And look, I've got to say, we were just talking about this before we got started, but whenever I host these podcasts, I always do a deep dive into social media presence. What can I find that can, tell a good story, to shape a good picture for people that are listening? And we spoke about this when we first connected, but you don't have any social media. So for the first time that I'll be hearing this as well, can you share why that is?
Yeah, I mean, I've always wanted to be a secret agent. No, I'm kidding. It's deliberate on that side. I think a long time ago, I stayed off of social media, and really just to make sure the focus of the conversation was always on, the enterprise that I was representing, and so that just kind of stayed. And then at some point, you feel like you're so far behind, I'll never catch up. So I'll just stay off of it at this point.
And do you have kids? What are their opinions on dad not being on socials?
I do, and it makes it tough because they send me Instagram pics or TikTok pics, and so I have to go through extra clicks to see the video that they're trying to talk about. I think it's an unfortunate yet inevitable stage in life where they just kind of look at you like you're a dinosaur, and they're okay with it.
You know what? I genuinely have an appreciation for it. If I could rewind time, I mean, I'm so far into it now and so far deep into it that it's hard for me to get out. But if I could rewind time and kind of make that conscious decision, I'd certainly do it myself, because you focus on the things you need to focus on. Don't get distracted by what's going on in the world, or at least try not to anyway. Easier said than done, of course. But anyway, let's get into things. So question I usually kick these things off with, Mike. Your journey into sports. Talk us about, where that very first started for you.
Well, so I think with a number of people in our business, it's a true passion. And so where does your true passion start? Well, it starts from you start to learn sports. And so I think growing up playing, I was fortunate enough to play football through high school and college. And so really kind of developed a love for that. But along the way, I played a number of different sports. And then it was one of those things where as you're coming out of school, you start looking at what the next step in your life is. And I got, as usually happens, you get great advice. At least I have from my parents. And at that time, my mom was like, "Go do, you should do something you love." And as a wise whatever I was at that point, 20-year old, I severely discounted that. I was like, "Nah, that's we'll put that in the mom bucket,
Of
and I'll
course.
focus in on what makes me money." But as usual, she was right, and so had a chance to find out that there was a real business to sports. And as I did that and got closer to it, that is really where I kind of got bit by the bug and was like, whoa, this could be a great way to spend your time, efforts, and career.
Yeah. Most people that take that first step typically tend to start off in ticketing or something close to ticketing anyway. What was the first gig for you?
I have probably an unpopular thought on that.
Okay.
I went through this where people were like, just get your foot in the door. And of course, entry level sales, those are some of the harder jobs. There's a lot of turnover and therefore there's a lot of opportunity.
Yeah.
I am not of that mindset, just
Okay.
get your foot in the door. I went through a process on call it a quarter life crisis. I went through a quarter life crisis, rightful age of 20, of like, what do I want to do and why do I want to do it? And like a real honest conversation with yourself, like one that you wouldn't feel comfortable at a cocktail party, exposing your
Right.
real thoughts on these things. And it was, I mean, Samir, it was one of the most valuable things I did. While it was painful and excruciating to go through, getting to the core of what you wanted to do, why you wanted to do it, and then mapping it back to, okay, well then what does that look like? Like what are those career paths that
Yeah.
hold those pieces? And as I went through that process, I just candidly, I started out thinking I wanted to be a sports agent. But as I went through the process, really found out I love the team side of the business. I appreciated and enjoyed kind of the growth aspect of it. How do you grow a business? How do you grow a relationship? And I really fell in love with the leadership side of it. And so that to me was the most important thing because once I was able to kind of put that, have some clarity around that being those being the places that I wanted to spend my time, or the craft, I should say,
Yeah.
that I wanted to spend my time on. The rest of the decisions, the rest of my career, thus far have been really easy
Yeah.
on what you want to go after.
It's quite mature to have that thought process at that age. I was 20, thinking about what I was doing when I was 20 years old. I was a personal trainer because I wanted to be big and I wanted to, work on my own body
I
and
like
physique.
that.
And I thought, what's the best way of doing this and getting paid to do it? Maybe if I can get other people to do the same thing. And I didn't really have that, self-reflection moment of what do I want to do in my career probably until I was at least in my mid 20s. So that's quite a young age to kind of think about really, deep dive into your own thought process and who you are and what you want to do. Was there someone in your life that was, helping you drive that thought process, or was that, completely a Mike decision and trail of thought?
No, I've been really fortunate. I've had great people around me, throughout my life, and I really believe in it takes a village, and I've definitely benefited from that approach. I remember that too. I also remember the people who wouldn't pick up the phone. So I
Okay.
know who you are. I remember who you are. But I do take that in seriously and try to make sure that if I'm ever in those situations that you're leaning in to help someone who's earlier in their career think through things. I remember I sat at the time with the general counsel of IMG as I was thinking about being a sports agent and going to get my law degree, and he just asked me, he's like, "Hey, Mike, do you really love reading and writing? Like, do you really love reading and writing?" And that kind of hit me because I'm like, no.
Yeah.
It was a means to an end. It wasn't something that I actually wanted to spend my time in. And that kind of started a process. I think, there's a reality when you get out of school, a cold reality of what the real world was. And I think that helped kind of push towards, gosh, what am I putting all this energy into? At the time I was doing a sales job for the Cleveland Cavaliers full time, and I was going to law school. full time. And that, when you start putting that much energy into things, I think it really forces you to say like, okay, like run a quick audit. Is this really worth the time? And when I
Yeah.
get to the end of this, will be the reward I was looking for? And I think that really kind of pushed me into it.
Yeah. No one's ever put that in black and white for me. I think similar to yourself, Mike, my first idea of where I want to end up in sports is to be a sports agent. And I know that you need to go and study, you need to go and do law and you need to go through that whole process, which, I mean, I don't even know if I was willing to do that. I just wanted to be that guy that traveled around and represented, big athletes and had that kind of fun, sexy side of the job. But yeah, it's very beneficial to have those people around you, at those key moments of your life when you're making big decisions. And, would certainly say to anyone out there that's thinking about what they want to do in their lives and careers, it's certainly important to lean on those that have been through it and have done it.
Yeah,
Because
I,
it's,
I, I think I think Samir, that's really important. And I would say is to have a lot of conversations really benefited me. I talked to a number of people. I tried to be a sponge. Right out of school, I was at IMG, in whatever the most menial capacity is, whatever that was my gig. And
yeah,
so, but what it afforded me was the opportunity to be around a number of people with great experience. And I took some other pieces, from that as well. And one of them was while you're studying for your LSAT, while you're getting ready to go, keep up the sports pedigree of your resume. And that really encouraged me to stay focused solely on the sports industry side of it, which ultimately led to other great resources and other great experiences. Like I'm a huge proponent, again, unpopular thoughts. I believe in education. I think that's great.
yeah,
The thing to me that trumps that um, is real world experience, and
no,
had the opportunity to get real experience inside of a team business, the Cavaliers, and I got to see it. And that's where I first got to see like, wow, here's a different thing that I hadn't experienced yet. Here's a team side of the business. And I loved it. I
yeah,
love the ability of an entire organization working as one organism towards one goal. Everybody contributes. Like those things to me really, really stuck out. And that was really because I kind of forced up my way. I was just taking some advice from somebody else. I thought I was going in one direction. And as I was taking that advice, I got some visibility into what ultimately led me to a different direction.
love it. And the Cavs, is that maybe the first time that you had that, you know, first pinch me moment? Like, holy shit, this is a fun industry to work in. There's, I don't know, could have been a playoff game, it could have been qualifying for a playoffs, it could have been your first, deal that you got over the line. What was that for you?
Well, we were terrible, so no playoffs
Okay.
for us. What I do like to say is um, it was the seasons that I was at the Cavs that ultimately put them in a position to get LeBron, which obviously changed the organization.
Awesome.
But yes, I mean, Samir, the answer is yes. There were two major moments while I was at the Cavs that really opened my eyes, and it had a profound impact. One was I was there, and I had some great leaders who really gave me a foundational look at how commerce works. What is a true sales process? Because candidly, before that, my notion of sales was a little kind of like, you know, um, car salesman
Right.
approach, and that's just kind of the bucket I had it in. And and going through a real process on a needs analysis, supplying solutions, techniques. That was one of those things where I was like, wow, that opened my eyes. And then the ability, very similar to, analogous to football or sports in general, there's a competitive aspect to it. There's an aspect of what you put in is
Yeah.
is is what you can get out. And so those were big moments for me. And I also had a big moment where I was able to help a teammate work on something. I saw the light go off for them, and there was a feeling that you have on that side. And I remember that feeling when I saw a teammate get over the hump on something that the two of us had been working on together. And when he got over that hump, that feeling, I remember thinking like, whatever that is, I want to do that. If
Yeah.
that can be a job, and to me, I think that's leadership or management. So those were kind of two big awakenings, if you will,
Yeah.
that I had a chance to experience at the Cavs.
Yeah. It's interesting that first realization, let's call it, that this is something I definitely want to be doing more of, and that leadership component. My thing was the exact same thing, by the way, Mike. I remember being in a small office in London, and celebrating the wins of someone who was coming to me for coaching and guidance, and how do I get around this, and how can we get over this hurdle, and seeing them win, and that feeling that it kind of gave me was, yeah, exactly the same. So I can relate there.
I
And
love
so
that.
you then moved over into AEG, right? So you go from the Cavs, or was there a stepping stone in between there?
Yeah, so I went, this will sound nomadic because it is. Um, I went from the Cavs and then I went to the Phoenix Suns,
Right.
which was a great time at that place. Had responsibilities with the Suns, had some responsibilities with the Mercury. Was little known fact because not on social media and maybe not memorable. Was also president of our ECHL team,
Okay.
the Phoenix Coyotes,
Oh yeah.
and great experience. Watched transition in ownership, and had the opportunity to experience an ownership that had multi sports properties.
Yeah.
From there, I went to the then Charlotte Bobcats,
Right.
dating
Yeah.
myself a little bit, which was also a great experience. Going through that, yeah, I'd bucket that as culture building. We had a lot of talent, um, and we had some internal challenges, and like, how do you build a culture? Because if you can build it from within, you'll do better externally. And that was a great experience. And as I said, we had some really, really great talent, some really great partners I met there. But then I got a call back to go to the Cavs. So I did 2 stints at the Cavs.
Okay.
And going back to the Cavs was a very different Cavaliers, new ownership. Dan Gilbert, who is a serial entrepreneur in the best
Yeah.
ways. And so at the Cavaliers, we had, had Cavaliers responsibilities. We had the Lake Erie Monsters. We went and acquired at the time it was called a D League team, now a G League team, the Canton Charge. We also bought a ticketing company, which was Flash Sheets, which is now turned into Access. And, and we also opened a casino, so got a little taste on the political side.
Yeah.
It's also my hometown. I don't know if I mentioned that. So it was a great experience, but I got a call, as I think I mentioned, a real passion for football. I got a call from AEG, who was trying to bring NFL back to Los Angeles with Farmers Field.
Yeah.
And so that in and of itself was really exciting. And ultimately, it gave me my first international experience because I had global responsibilities on the premium side. So went out to AEG, and left Cleveland, and that was also another, this setup, this idea of a global platform,
Right.
and understanding international business. Probably another one of those where you get goosebumps when you walked in the door.
Yeah, well, I mean, if I'm tracking the timeline of this correctly, um, ownership level at AEG was at that point anyway, and I'm sure it still is, but was top tier. They had some of the best leaders across the industry. They had done a fantastic job at bringing talent on board. They had the sports thing, they had the venues and entertainment thing. They were and still are a beast in the industry. You go from being in a team environment and kind of focusing on not one thing. You mentioned a fair few things there. I'm not going to discount the several plates that you had spinning there, but it's a different environment, right? How did that kind of transition play out for you, and what are some of the kind of learns, I guess, that you took from working in a team environment versus working in a beast like AEG?
Yeah, I mean, it was a great experience. At a team environment, you have the benefit of proximity.
Yeah.
You're there every day, you're around people every day. There is, like I said, there's a real advantage to that. I think when you go to a platform, it really forces you to think through how you can be effective at scale. And so if you're running a business, at the time it was Staples Center, in Los Angeles. So you got Staples Center, you have the Galaxy down south. And then we had a venue in Ontario, and then we had Kansas City. We had London. I would go to London often with O2.
Love it.
You had my usual trip was London. We had Stockholm. We had venues there. We had two in Germany as well. At Hamburg at the time was also O2 in Berlin.
Yeah.
And then we had some out in Shanghai, or China, I should say. So Shanghai, Dalian, and Beijing, as well as a number of others. What that really kind of forced you to do was to say, okay, well, how are we effective overall? How do we build consistency? And how do we do it in such a way that allows autonomy for the people on the ground to make sure the local cultural nuance doesn't trip us up, that we can actually use that as an advantage? And so at that stage, kind of being there, it was like, okay, well, let's build a platform. Let's have a system. Let's have a value system on how our leaders can interpret not only just managing their groups, but actually external commercially, and implement that. And so that was a great experience. Like that was one of the things that to this day, I love. I think one of the biggest takeaways I would share, especially when you think about a global business, is at the end of the day, personal connection is what drives. So you can put the value system up. We created an on-demand communication system. We had principles on how we approach campaigns. That being said, having a call, going through that, you get so much connectivity. I think going there, being on the ground, spending time with people, kind of the cultural stuff, it's amazing. It just melts away. And then it really just becomes to trust and personal connection. And when you have that aligned on your team, you can do great things. You can do things that people don't expect, but you have to have that foundation. And that was probably my biggest takeaway from my time at AEG. One of my fondest memories as well.
And you've spoken about that since, I guess, that, the importance on culture, people, and experience, which we'll come back to. But I'd certainly love to learn a bit more about that. Just before we get there, and I guess we get on to where you're at today, Mike. One beast to another, I guess. You spent a decade at Legends. I'm sure you were involved in some of the kind of major naming rights and partnership deals over there, and stadium venue development over there. Talk to us about that experience and the kind of key learns and what you took from spending 10 years at yet again another beast in the industry.
I think when I copped her up and I look back at my career, it was great because I really believe one thing led to another. There's a teammate that I had in the past. His name's Dan Magala. He has this word that he shared with me, pronoia. It's the opposite of paranoia. So it's basically the world is conspiring on your behalf. I didn't try to architect that career, but I just benefited from it. It lined up really well. And so coming off of AEG, I had a call from Shervin Merhashimi, who was at one point, he's who hired me at AEG. He had since left to go to Legends, and I knew a bunch of the guys at Legends and loved them. And it was kind of one of those things where I had experienced that I love the entrepreneurial spirit. Like that was one of the things that really kind of came out to me throughout my career, and the opportunity to build a platform. And most importantly, to do it with people you want to be around all day, very simply put, who do you want to be in the trenches with? And so I really felt that opportunity was there. Had a great ownership stack, Cowboys, Yankees at the time, Goldman Sachs. And it was one of those pieces that you look at where you started. And we were a little larger than this, but just for sake of drama and telling the story, I always say it was like Shervin and I, two people, his assistant and his goldfish, in an office in Century City, trying to grow a business. And now again, we were born on third base a little bit here, so I don't want to paint it too much the other way, because we had a great ownership stack. We had some really blue chip clients to at least start the business off with.
Yeah.
That being said, we were a small business at that point, handful of clients. I think we're a few hundred employees, maybe 500 employees at that point. And it was a fantastic example of, if you have the right approach and the right people, you can see the market for not what it is, but what it can be. And then you have the people to go out and execute on that. We grew it to $400 million EBITDA company, 70,000 employees, offices from Los Angeles to Europe, and spending a lot of time in the Middle East when I left. It was a great experience on how to build something.
Love it. And talking about pronoia, I love that, by the way. I'm certainly going to take that away and use that. There's
That's a
one
good
thing
one.
that people can take away from this is probably pronoia
That's a good
is the
one.
one word that sticks. That leads you to the seat you're in today. You're 9-10 months into it. Talk to us about this exciting project that you guys are working on at the moment over at the Texans.
Yeah, it's really special. I mean, I really believe it's a one-on-one. I think when I was reached out to about the opportunity, it was from a executive recruiter, Chad Biagini at the time, and he had shared, hey, there's a president opportunity, and candidly, I was like, I'm not that interested. I don't want to go back to a single asset. I love football. I didn't even know it was football at that point, but he knew all those things. And he's like,
Right.
Mike, just take some time, learn the opportunity, sign the NDA, and I'll tell you more. And because I had trust in the fact that we had spent time over the years, and he knew me and how I looked at things, said, okay, I'll take a look at it. And I think what was really unique to me is, as I got close to it, it was like, one, ownership stuck out to me. I think having the chance to spend with Cal and Hannah McNair, spend some really good time and just understand how they looked at the business, how they looked at the world, specifically on how the Texans can help elevate the profile of Houston, like a real stewardship towards the city through the team, their high expectations of the team, all those things. Is like that's special. It's like, okay, that is something you I think most people would love to be a part of. I think the next piece was looking at the stage. As I got closer to Houston, I believe we just overtook Chicago as the third largest city in the United States.
Oh, wow.
Third most Fortune 500 companies in the United States, most diverse city, international city. That is a great stage. So if you're going to do something great, it's more fun when you have a stage that can reverberate.
Yeah.
And so that was a big piece. The team and the teammates here and what I knew about them, that was really appealing. And then, I'd say the McNair's aspirations to build beyond the Texans, to make sure that we're building the right ecosystem that supports the Texans. That was another thing. If you just kind of look back, I was like, that you're speaking my language. Like, let's go. And so, all those things lining up made this a really, really special opportunity. And I'd say 8-9 months into it, the best thing, Samir, is, they are authentic, they are genuine. It is as advertised. Everything we had talked about is either coming to fruition or already has. So really excited about the momentum that we have all over the place. And specifically, when I was talking to him, there were a couple moments that were already identified that we knew could be transformative, from a stadium development to, a practice facility opportunity. And again, just kind of looking at it holistically, not like, here's a venue, we got to focus in on this, but like, what is the overall ecosystem? What is a way we can push everything forward, push the city forward, push the industry forward? And as I shared, that's what we talked about, and that's what's true.
Yeah. The journey is, as you said, it's led you to being in the position that you're in today. It's always good to hear things playing out as people wish they would play out, because you hear so many stories that are on the flip side, right? Of things not being quite as they seemed and not being quite as they framed things to be. So to see that all start to come to fruition, the stadium stuff sounds super exciting. And I guess feeding into that, one thing that I'd love to kind of pick your brain on today, Mike, that I think a lot of people would find really valuable is is, fan experience, as a whole, and that journey that the fan goes through, right from leaving their house in the morning and, tailgating right through to the game, right through to how they get home, all of that sort of stuff. But when you turned up, maybe let's start here. When you turned up, what was the first thing that you noticed about that, the game day vibe at the Texans, the stadium, the fan base, everything that really caught your attention?
I think two things caught my attention right out of the gates. Was the passion of the fan base, and that's a great thing to have,
Yeah.
because that's a tough thing to build. So we had we have a great fan base, great foundation there. The other thing that really jumped out to me, Samir, was actually the passion of our organization. Like
Yeah.
we call everybody here teammates. The passion of our teammates in there, that really hit me. And it was funny. I was talking to Cal a little while ago, and he was asking me about my expectations coming in. I was like, I candidly, I don't know what my expectations of the organization were, the teammates.
Yeah.
That being said, I was, I guess, surprised at the level of passion, how much each teammate enjoys what they do. And that was really, really a huge benefit for me, certainly, as you think about building the business and what's the next stage, is knowing you have a great foundation. Um, I would tell you that is key in having a great fan experience. Is what is what is what is the disposition of the organization? We actually talked about this yesterday at one of our um, company-wide huddles, where we get together, and we have a charge. It's our ethos. It's really our mandate, our approach, and the charge, our purpose in the charge, is win championships, which we got to do that step by step, day by day. But that's the goal. That's our purpose, and as well as to um, cultivate and deliver a world-class fan experience. And as we talked about yesterday, to really deliver a world-class fan experience, that's a call to service. That means the organization has to be structured culturally and overall. And, from our perspective, we have two business units, two business lines. I love Cliff Notes. So we'll keep it really simple.
Yeah.
We have a business line that services externally. We have those, our marketers, ticket sales, corporate partnerships, our foundation, those who are out in the community servicing the community, the corporate community, the fan base, etc.
Yeah.
And then we have business units that service internally. It's HR, it's IT, it's finance, it's parts of operations. The key being is that we're all coming from that mindset. And I think that is one of the pieces that really jumped out to me in the beginnings. We had a great foundation to build off of that identity, to build off of that DNA, to make sure we're delivering a great fan experience on game day.
And so that's where I think a lot of people assume or think that the role of a president or a CEO is you're the one that makes the big decisions. You're the one that tells people what they need to do. You're the one that, has final say on what happens. But it takes someone to really genuinely believe the importance of culture and people and identity. And you speak very passionately about that. And you mentioned it at an earlier point in your career. But, building a strong organizational foundation is as important as performance on the field. It's as important as driving revenue. It's as important as all of these other things. But not everyone sees that. Not everyone else, really believes in that across the industry. So seeing that come to life for you and seeing the team around you at the Texans, I can only imagine was, this is going to be a great journey. It's almost making you a bit more invested in that journey that you're all on together.
Yeah, no, I agreed. I mean, I think I want to give a lot of credit to Cal McNair. Before I started, we were going back over, it was like the day before, and we were going back over what we had talked prior to me accepting the role and going over the initiatives. And I remember saying, it's like, hey, just going back over them, making sure it's still relevant. This is where we're headed. And I said, I was like, hey, we're going to do all these things. So just so you know, we're going to do all of them. We're going to do all of them in parallel. We're going to be wildly successful at them. That being said, how do you think about them from a priority standpoint? Like where's the emphasis? Where's the priority on these things? And one of the initiatives he pulled out right out of the gates is he was like, it's the people and the culture. He's like, that's where I want the focus to be, right out of the gates. And so again, I think that's the backdrop, that's the setting that, certainly I've been fortunate enough to be able to operate in over the
Yeah.
last 8 months. But it has to start there if it's going to be, authentic and genuine.
You spoke about Houston, unique city. It's now, I'm going to quote you on this, it's now the third biggest city, biggest market in the US. It's diverse, it's got its own culture, it's the food, the pace of it. It is a vibrant city. How are you and your team thinking about, infusing all of that into that kind of game day experience so it really does feel like, Texans in Houston rather than just another NFL team?
Yeah, no, that's really important to us. I mean, Houstonians, rightfully so. There's a lot to be proud of where you come from in the city overall, and so that's important to us. We really want to make sure when you're coming to the stadium, it feels like home. And not only
Yeah.
does it feel like home, and it feels relevant to you, it's something that you're proud to showcase. That you can feel great that hey, I am being represented by the Texans in the way that I would be proud of. And so, our efforts are there. I think there's a couple places. We're one of the most diverse cities in the United States as well. And so we want to make sure those game elements, that music is all represented there. The mariachi here is one of the fan favorites across the board,
Yeah.
regardless of background. And so it's game entertainment elements that we try to rotate through that are really important. And so is the theming of the games, and really trying to codify the attitude and the approach, through the Texans when
Yeah.
we theme out a game. And so we just had Rep in H-Town, which is, we represented with our uniforms and certainly kind of the traditional game day chants to make sure that, like you said, it's not just a regular NFL stadium. You come in here, you're going to know you're in Houston. You won't
Yeah.
mistake that. And that's something that we continue to build on. We know we can get better at it. Coach has a get better mindset on the field, and that's kind of what we take in the office as well. And so that's the base, and we're always trying to figure out ways that we can be even more authentic and represent in the right way, for all of our fans.
And so you've got to really, I don't want to say it's a challenging job, but it's something that requires a lot of thought, and I'm sure it is challenging. Someone will definitely quote me on that. Maintaining culture, right? So maintaining those things that Houstonians love, that football fans love, but also trying to innovate and also trying to grow and develop that fan experience without coming away from that identity. As I say it out loud, that is actually a challenging thing. So I'll scratch my earlier comment. But how do you do that without one taking a hit and the other one kind of overpowering the other?
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, was it has to start at the center and then you can go out and making sure you have a real comfort in who you are. And, from a Texans standpoint, we're really comfortable with who we are. I think again, I'll keep pointing back to the charge, which is kind of our ethos. One of our charge sayings or approaches is to fearlessly evolve. And that is authentic. That's where we're coming from. And so the ability to look at things differently, the courage to take those steps and those risks, understanding everything that, how it could be received, that's exciting to me. To me, status quo and just kind of growing a couple percent, that's boring. I think the ability to be in a position where you can be authentic to the idea that you can challenge and you can grow, That's an exciting piece. And so how do we do those things? Well, first we want to stay in touch with the fan base. We have a fan council. We bounce ideas off them. We make sure we're listening so we understand how our fan base is evolving too. And then when we look at ourselves as being world class, that means, or aspiring to be world class, where in areas that we're not, that means that we're also understanding and can be a subject matter expert to really help with our fan base to show them where the next experience is. And again, we're comfortable doing that because we want to fearlessly evolve. So it all kind of makes sense to us on that side. We're going to miss on some.
Yeah, no doubt.
And again, we're okay with that.
Fortune favors the bold, right? And I think it's important that that is a part of your DNA. And I think that's a really, really good answer to that question, because or therefore they're not two different things, are they? If innovating and trying to be progressive and trying to evolve is a part of your culture and your DNA, then they both feed into each other and you can do both at the same time. And maybe that's where a lot of people, find that challenge is they kind of see them as two separate things. Whereas if you can find a way to merge them together through culture, through people, through having a bunch of talented, creative minds all in a room together thinking about cool ideas of how you can grow and innovate, it's no surprise that you're going to see some success stories come out of that. I guess to piggyback on that point, when you sit down with your senior team and you guys are talking about game day strategy, what's on the agenda? What are the things that you guys are discussing as this is non-negotiable versus this is up for creative debate?
I don't know if we think about it in terms of non-negotiables, and I'd have to think a little bit more on that. Maybe that's hopefully that points to good alignment. We know what our foundation is, and so I think one of the things when we look at these conversations, and I can kind of give you the background into this one comment. A big piece for us is about alignment. We talk about alignment a lot. Great companies are aligned. For us to deliver a world-class fan experience, to be world-class is the ultimate goal. And how do we get there? We get there through a process of big rocks. Like, okay, if I put all my effort towards this one thing and I move this rock, it changes the landscape for the better. How does everyone know what those big rocks are that lead to this world-class goal? To make sure that every person who walks in feels great. They know how they're contributing to it. They know why they're contributing to it, and they can see, the end result. And so one of our big rocks that we have as an organization this year is innovation. And you said something that really, really hit me, Samir. It's like the more smart people looking at something, at one thing, the better the answer is going to be. And so, for us, it's really about activating an entire organization. It's not like, oh, this is our one group of innovation, just these people right here. It's really about a culture. It's about a creative discipline. It's about using that muscle, that innovative muscle, and then applying it towards different areas. And so in our innovation rock, we have two groups. We have an innovation group that's cross-pollinated from different people across the org who go through those really kind of innovation exercises, and then we'll move them on so that we start touching everybody in the org. So there's a term to it. And then we have a best practice group. As I said, we're striving for world class. We have to get better. We have things to do. We have places that not only are we not world class, but we're not a best practice. And so we look at that, and there's a group that focuses in on that. Where are we not best practice? What is the best practice, and how do we implement it? So we raise the bar across the board. With both of those things, we'll take game experience elements. Like, okay, how do we think about early arrivals better? We know the team, we hear it from the guys, the team feels it when the crowd is in early and loud. And we want to make sure this is not an easy place for opposing teams to come play. One major component about that is the fan base. And so from a fan experience standpoint, how do we get people into the seats earlier so that competitive advantage isn't just starting at kickoff or a handful of minutes earlier? It's starting during pregame, and we've put that in front of our innovation and our best practice groups, and so they've been coming up with ideas. And there's nothing really that's off limits. There's some things where you're like, ooh, I don't know if we should do that, but we're in a safe space right now. So it's kind of like, let's get all those things out and then let's start vetting them. And so we're in process of implementing different things right now, testing it to see how impactful it is. But that's a process. That's not just an episodic thing. It's making sure we have a process in place and we can apply different elements. And a lot of times it has to do with different elements from the game experience on how we get better at it.
Yeah. Rome wasn't built in a day, right? It takes time to bring all of those things to life. And I guess as you guys are talking about those things and you are trying to bring those to life, there's naturally going to be some immediate impact things, the next 12 months that we can go out and deliver on versus where are we headed to, right? What is that North Star? What is the plan for the next kind of 3 to 5 years? How do you, juggle those two things simultaneously where you're still executing on the here and now, but also thinking about the long-term plan?
Yeah, no, it's that I love that topic. It's a great question. Because as I mentioned, we have a new project, a new development on the horizon. We're focused on a renovation, but we know it's going to look new overall. It'll be a different experience. We have that opportunity in front of us, and it'll be seismic. And so, that all being said, that's 7 years away at this stage.
Yeah.
And so for us, it's really about how do we build to an easy transition? How do we start optimizing today so that we're in the best position to optimize in the future? And so we really do think about all those things as a step. How do we continue to improve with the end goal of really bringing something brand new experience, I should say, to Houston? And so like we even think about that from an inventory standpoint. I'd tell you right now, we're a 23-year-old building. 23 years ago, Samir, I would have called you from a phone that was connected to a wall. Today, I mean, my kids can't even fathom that idea. And so it's just a different time. And so how do we continue to make sure that we're ready for the future? Well, we look at, again, just this frothy corporate base that we have here in Houston. The reality is we only have two major corporate products in the building right now. We have suites and club seats. And so how do we introduce new products out to the market so that, one, it betters the experience for the here and now, but two, it also is a nurturing process. It's a socializing process. So corporations know how to use these products. So when we unveil them in, the stadium, the new stadium experience down the line, they're already familiar with it. They already know how to use it. They're excited about it. It's not like, okay, what is this? How does it work? Why does it cost this much, etc.? It is something that we've already introduced into the market. And so that's just one example of how we think about how do we get better today? What's better for the fan base today? And how does that connect to the future?
Well, I'm sure all of the Texans fans out there will be very pleased to hear that, excited to see it come to life. I'm excited to see it come to life, man. I've got a huge appreciation for ideas that start with culture and identity, and then how do we build and develop that into something bigger and something better? And you keep mentioning world class. You've said that a few times. That's the North Star for you guys. What are we doing to get there? And back to that earlier point, the leadership team around you is no doubt going to be pushing you to make that happen. You're going to be pushing the guys to make that happen, but having that collaborative thought process and mindset, and ultimately for the fans, being the end goal, is certainly exciting. And I guess lastly is, as we wrap up here, Mike, if you had to sum up one thing, one vibe, one feeling that you want fans to walk away with after they've been to a Texans home game, what would you say that thing is?
I'd say it's elation and pride. I think elation's good for us. That means that we won. And then, pride in that we're representing the city in the way that everyone is proud of.
Love it. Love it. Well, look, you've got an exciting team out there at the moment. Some great young talent. You've got a great coach. I'm excited to see where you guys go over the course of the next few years. And there's no doubt that under your leadership on the business side, it's a really exciting Texans.
Well, hey, Samir, I appreciate you having me. I appreciate this platform and what you're doing for the industry overall. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and thanks for joining me, Mark. It's been great having you on. Great conversation. I hope listeners out there have taken one or two things from this. Pronoia is still the one thing that I'm going to be taking away from this, but certainly learned a lot myself. So, Mike, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, and thanks, folks, for listening.
Thanks. Go Texans.